It was August 13, 2018, at 1:45 a.m., on a quiet street in Frederick, Colorado, where a nightmare was unfolding. Christopher Watts stood in his dimly lit backyard, a look of desperation etched on his face. Shanann and the girls were unaccounted for, and the police were soon to arrive. In mere hours, Christopher Watts would become the focus of a manhunt. His lies and deceit would be exposed, and the truth would be as gruesome as it was unforgiving. The scene before us is one of stark horror. A shallow grave, hastily dug in a secluded corner of the yard, held a secret that would shake the very foundations of this small community. Shanann, 15 weeks pregnant, lay motionless, her body battered and bruised. The air was thick with the smell of death, a noxious odor that clung to every surface. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the chaotic scene. As we delve deeper into this case, let's take a closer look at Christopher Watts, the man at the center of this maelstrom. Watts, a devoted father, or so it seemed, stood accused of committing one of the most heinous crimes in recent memory. A calculated killer, with a seemingly normal facade, had been hiding in plain sight. The police would later discover a trail of deceit and lies that would ultimately lead to his downfall. But for now, Christopher Watts remained at large, free to continue his reign of terror. Just a few houses down, witnesses reported hearing strange noises in the early hours of that fateful night. The sounds of arguing and screeching filled the air, followed by an unsettling silence. Some claimed to have seen a figure lurking in the shadows, but no one suspected a thing. It wasn't until the next morning, when the police began to investigate, that the gravity of the situation became clear. And when they finally arrived at the Watts residence, they were met with a scene that would haunt them for years to come. On the scene, the first responders found a family torn apart, a father's lies exposed, and a community left reeling. The police would later discover that the bodies of Bella and Celeste were hidden inside crude oil tanks, each with an opening only 8 inches in diameter. Inside the house, a gruesome crime scene awaited, and the discovery of Shanann's body would be just the beginning. The investigation that followed would reveal a tangled web of deceit and betrayal. The Watts family's dark secret was about to be laid bare for all to see. Before we go further, hit subscribe and the bell. We post new cases every single day. Let me take you back to the very beginning of this story. Christopher Watts, a 33-year-old oil field worker, had it all. A beautiful pregnant wife, 2 adorable daughters, and a promising career. But beneath the surface, a toxic web of lies and deceit was simmering, just waiting to be exposed. The Watts family's seemingly idyllic life was about to take a dark and sinister turn. As we delve deeper into this case, we'll explore the twisted motives behind Christopher Watts's crimes. We'll examine the red flags that were ignored, the warning signs that were missed, and the devastating consequences of his actions. As we begin to unravel the complex threads of this case, it becomes clear that Christopher Watts's descent into madness was a long time coming. The stress of his failing marriage, the pressure of his job, and the strain of raising 2 young daughters took a toll on his mental health. But it was his own ego and selfish desires that ultimately led him to commit the unthinkable. Shanann, the loving wife and mother of 2, had discovered her husband's infidelity, and he knew his world was about to come crashing down. The noose was tightening, and Christopher Watts knew he had to act fast. Christopher Lee Watts was the central person in this case, born on May 16, 1985, at the age of 33 when he committed the murders. He resided in Frederick, Colorado with his pregnant wife Shanann and their 2 daughters. Watts worked as an operator for Anadarko Petroleum, a position he enjoyed. His family life appeared normal and happy. In reality, this facade masked a dark and sinister reality. Christopher Watts' daily life seemed ordinary, with a loving family and a job he liked. He often posted pictures of his family on social media, showcasing their life as a happy one. His friends and colleagues thought of him as a devoted father and husband. Shanann was a stay-at-home mom, caring for their daughters and their unborn child. She was described as a kind and caring person by those who knew her. Despite his likable exterior, Watts had a darker side that he kept hidden from the world. His behavior became increasingly erratic in the months leading up to the murders. Friends and family began to notice a change in his personality, but they couldn't quite put their finger on it. He was charming and charismatic, making it difficult for others to see through his facade. Watts had a way of making those around him believe he was the victim of his own circumstances. Watts' relationships were complex and multifaceted. He trusted his mistress, Nicole Kessinger, whom he had been seeing in secret. He also trusted his friends and colleagues, who often saw him as a model husband and father. However, it's clear now that Watts' relationships were built on deceit and manipulation. His friendship with Anadarko coworker, Chris McCall, would later come under scrutiny. Watts' trust issues lay deep beneath the surface, waiting to be exposed. The months leading up to the murders saw a significant change in Watts' life. He met Nicole Kessinger, with whom he had an affair. This newfound connection seemed to bring out a darker side in Watts. He became increasingly distant from his family, spending more time with Kessinger. Watts' affair with Kessinger was a pivotal moment in his life, one that would set in motion a tragic chain of events. As the months went by, Watts' behavior became more and more erratic. Friends and family noticed that something was wrong with Watts. His increasing distance from his family and his growing anger towards Shanann were red flags that went ignored. His co-workers at Anadarko saw a change in his behavior, but they attributed it to a simple midlife crisis. They didn't suspect the true horror that was unfolding behind closed doors. The first warning signs were subtle, but they were there for those who were paying attention. As the warning signs mounted, Watts' behavior became more erratic. He began to isolate himself from his family and friends, spending more time with Kessinger. His co-workers at Anadarko noticed that he was preoccupied and distant. Shanann, on the other hand, seemed oblivious to the danger that lurked in her own home. She continued to post happy family pictures on social media, blissfully unaware of the horror that was about to unfold. But there was one person who noticed something was amiss. A neighbor noticed Watts' strange behavior in the days leading up to the murders. She described him as nervous and on edge. This neighbor would later come forward with her concerns, but would it have made a difference? Did Watts' behavior go unnoticed by those closest to him? The next question we will explore is: on that fateful night of August 13, 2018, the sky was a deep shade of indigo, with the stars shining brightly above the small town of Frederick, Colorado. The air was crisp and calm, carrying the faint scent of the nearby oil rigs. It was 1:48 a.m., and the world was hushed in a peaceful slumber. Little did anyone know, a horrific crime was about to unfold in the quiet streets of Frederick. The darkness seemed to hide the evil that was to come. The sequence of events leading up to the crime began on August 11, 2018, when Christopher Watts returned home from a weekend trip to attend to his daughters and wife, Shanann. Shanann had been away on a business trip to Arizona, and Watts had been left to care for the children. Meanwhile, Shanann's friend, Nicole Toft Atkinson, had been in constant communication with her, and Shanann had been looking forward to returning home on Monday morning. On the night of August 12, 2018, Shanann had messaged Atkinson that she was running late due to a delayed flight. As the night wore on, Shanann's excitement and anticipation turned to worry and concern. As the night of August 13, 2018, wore on, Shanann returned home from her delayed flight, and Nicholas Toft Atkinson drove her to the family's home on Saratoga Trail. After dropping Shanann off, Atkinson waited in her car for a few minutes, but Shanann didn't seem to be answering the door or responding to knocking. Atkinson's concerns grew, and she texted Watts, but he didn't respond. Eventually, Atkinson contacted the Frederick Police Department, and a team was dispatched to the scene. As the police arrived, they found the front door to the Watts home unlocked, and a sense of unease settled over the neighborhood. It was then that police discovered the full extent of the horror, but one detail stands out as particularly shocking: the way the Watts children, Bella and Celeste, were brutally murdered. They were suffocated to death, and their tiny bodies were stuffed into crude oil tanks, each with an opening just 8 inches in diameter. The image of these small, innocent children being so callously disposed of is a haunting one, and it's an atrocity that continues to haunt the community to this day. The first person to discover what happened was Nicole Atkinson, who had driven Shanann home just hours before. She was shaken to her core by what she had seen, and her mind was racing with questions. Who could have committed such a heinous crime? Why would someone take the lives of such a young family? The questions swirled around her like a nightmare, and she knew she had to tell the police everything she knew. Comment below, what do you think really happened here? Did Christopher Watts snap in that moment of desperation, or was it something more sinister? Was it a premeditated act of violence, or did it come from a twisted desire to control and manipulate those closest to him? We want to hear from you. Join the conversation in the comments below. As we delve deeper into the Watts family tragedy, we are met with a series of twists and turns that will leave you on the edge of your seat. The truth, as we know it, seems simple enough: a man committed a horrific crime and got away with it. But nothing about this case is simple. There are secrets, lies, and deceit hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered. And as we continue to dig deeper, we find ourselves hurtling towards a shocking revelation that will blow everything wide open. Stay tuned for our next video, as we uncover the truth behind the Watts family murders and follow the investigation that would ultimately lead to the downfall of a manipulative monster. Police first responded to the Watts residence at 2825 Saratoga Trail in Frederick, Colorado, around 12:10 p.m. on August 13, 2018, after Nicole Atkinson, a friend of Shanann's, reported her missing. A Frederick police officer arrived at the scene and spoke with Watts, who claimed to have no knowledge of his wife's whereabouts. Watts told the officer that Shanann had gone to bed early and he hadn't seen her since. He also stated that the girls were at home with him. The key piece of evidence that changed everything was the discovery of Shanann's purse and phone in the garage, later found to be linked to Watts' alibi. This evidence suggested that Watts may have been involved in Shanann's disappearance. Further investigation revealed that Watts had lied to police, providing a false timeline of his activities on the morning of August 13. The inconsistencies in his story raised suspicions. Detectives began to dig deeper into Watts' involvement. The main suspects in the case were Watts and 2 of his coworkers at Anadarko Petroleum. Police interviewed Watts multiple times, but he consistently denied any involvement in his family's disappearance. The investigation also turned to Nicole Atkinson, who had been friends with Shanann, but she had a solid alibi for the time of the disappearance. Atkinson's husband was a former police officer, which initially raised suspicions. However, further investigation cleared her of any wrongdoing. The red herring in the case was the lead on a possible suspect, a man who had dated Shanann in the past. Police spent months investigating this lead, interviewing the suspect and his family, but ultimately it turned out to be a dead end. The investigation into this suspect wasted valuable time and resources, delaying the discovery of the truth about Watts' involvement in the disappearance. The community began to lose hope as the investigation dragged on. Some began to speculate that the girls might never be found. The biggest mistake investigators made was underestimating Watts' ability to manipulate them. They initially saw him as a cooperative suspect, but in reality, he was manipulating them to get away with the crime.